Pub landlord Mick Hughes is ferociously attacked in the living quarters above his bar. He's battered and beaten over the head and left bleeding to die. After hundreds of hours of investigation, the police are baffled. They just don't have enough evidence to make an arrest.
There was a feeling of a marathon about that inquiry.
Local psychic Angela McGee visits the scene of the crime.
I could see a vision of Mick's body lying under the window. Actually could see his injuries.
Her spirit allies show her the terrible truth.
I got this awful shudder through me. And I realised then that I was actually looking at the culprit.
Can Angela's supernatural visions help bring the brutal killer to justice? Sunday, April 27th, 2003. Police race towards the quiet village of Pelsall near Birmingham, towards the Royal Oak pub. Staff arriving for work have found the body of the landlord, Mick Hughes, brutally bludgeoned to death. Detective Inspector Ian Bamber and Detective Constable Mike Crump have the job of catching the killer.
Mick's body was found in his private bedroom area that was on the first floor of the pub.
He had sustained serious head injuries consistent with him being struck with an object.
The attack had been ferocious, sustained, and really malicious. If offenders had meant to incapacitate him, to render him unconscious or knock him out, you could have easily done that with one or two blows. But no, they hit him again and again and again. The bedroom upstairs where Mick slept was ransacked.
All the early indications suggested was that it had been a burglary that had gone drastically wrong.
Michael Hughes was a family man, just 2 months away from his 60th birthday. His daughter Sharon is devastated by the news.
You see it on TV, but until you've actually lived it, you can't describe how it destroys you as a person and as a family. You really can't. They asked me and my sister if we could go down to the morgue and identify my dad's body. It was the worst thing I've ever had to do in my life.
Sharon and her family are desperate for justice. But despite weeks of intensive forensic investigation and hundreds of interviews with local people, the police cannot find any conclusive evidence. A neighboring publican decides to call in psychic medium Angela McGee.
I had a phone call from a friend and she asked me to go down to help with the local murder. And my reaction was, what if they don't believe, you know? I'm not going to go down there and look stupid. I said, I'll wait till I get a message through spirit. I'll wait till the right moment.
Within days, that moment comes.
Well, I had a message from my own father in spirit. It was him that actually told me to go. He said, what about this murder? What about this murder? And then I knew I had to go. I believe that mediumship, you are an instrument of the spirit world. It's not voluntary. You just do what you have to do.
Angela drives to the Royal Oak pub. She's never been here before and knows nothing about the murder, but that is about to change.
I sat there in meditation for a little while, said my prayers, and put my hands up and said, dear God, what have I got to tell these people? With that, I had a vision. I saw 3 men climbing up a black fire escape staircase, over the roof, over the railings, and in through the French windows. And I thought to myself, that is where they've got in this building.
Emboldened by her vision, Angela decides to go in. She is greeted by Beryl Chapman, former partner of Mick Hughes, who is looking after the Royal Oak. girl shows Angela to the living quarters of the pub. She stands in the hall. Then suddenly she is shown a second vision.
I could see bodies struggling, as if there was a real push-pull-you type thing going on, and there was blood. It was just a flash, literally a flash, a vision.
Angela goes to the bedroom where Mick met his grisly fate. As she moves into the room, Spirit sends her another terrifying glimpse of the past.
Again, another flash, vision. I could see a vision of Mick's body lying under the window. Actually could see his injuries in his head and down the one side.
Now Angela sees something wonderful.
And all of a sudden, I saw Mick in my mind's eye.
The spirit of the dead publican appears standing before her.
And he was making a point of a thick gold chain bracelet which was holding up.
Mick tells Angela that his killer also stole his bracelet.
Mick said that he knew that person, he had drunk with that person, he had fished with that person, he knew that person very, very well. I felt totally aghast. I just thought, take a deep breath here, I can't believe what I've just heard.
It's an astonishing revelation. But before Angela can react, she has another vision. 3 men running away.
It's almost as if they've rushed past me, and if I could feel their panic. But one of them had something the size of a shoebox with him. That's all I saw.
Angela has never experienced such an incredible barrage of visions, but as she leaves the pub, she has the most terrifying insight of all.
As I walked through the pub, I glanced at the bar, and there behind the bar was a young man pulling pints. I got this awful shudder through me, complete coldness. I just felt that there was complete emptiness there, as if it got no soul. And I realised then that I was actually looking at the culprit.
Not waiting to see his face, Angela runs from the pub. If she's correct, the killer is still right under the noses of the police. Landlord McGee has been brutally murdered above his pub, the Royal Oak, by person or persons unknown. Psychic Angela McGee has visited the scene of the crime. Her spirit allies sent her an astonishing series of visions containing clues about the murder.
I saw the vision of 3 men going up to the Black's Fire escape staircase. I then saw Mick's body. I saw Mick himself. I saw 3 men leaving with something the size of a shoebox. I glanced at the bar, and I realised then that I was actually looking at the culprit.
Despite months of painstaking investigation, the police still don't have enough solid evidence to make an arrest.
And when there was a feeling of a marathon about that inquiry.
There was a great deal of information coming in that was being looked at, but little that was helping us to get to the bottom of what had actually happened.
The police are running out of options when fate leads them to Angela.
In the course of my inquiries, I met a woman who had met Angela McGee at one of her psychic meetings. This woman stated that Angela had discussed the murder with her.
We decided that whilst the evidential opportunities might be limited, it would really be foolhardy and a bit ignorant not to at least go and speak to Angela.
Mike Crump and a colleague go to Angela's house to interview her.
She invited us in. She made us a cup of tea, and we spoke to Angela about what she knew.
Angela tells the police about her vision on the fire escape and of the body in the bedroom. She had no way of knowing these things, but her account matches closely what police found in forensic examination.
I was startled and sceptical, equally curious and intrigued.
Now she really begins to surprise the police.
She claimed that 3 men had been involved in the murder, and that one of those men had known Michael Hughes.
It sounds incredible, but Angela's information fits with a number of theories the police are working on.
To put numbers on offenders raised some eyebrows, but from analysing the scene and trying to generate some hypotheses around what had happened, I think we were all fairly comfortable that it was more than one.
She'd had a vision of them running away, one of them carrying a shoebox-shaped object.
The police know what Angela does not, that a safe the size of a shoebox was taken from the pub.
We clearly knew that the safe had been ripped from its housing, so to hear Angela describe a box-shaped object being carried by a man was fascinating.
Angela's visions confirm facts the police already know or things they suspect.
Her account fitted in on a number of features with the hypotheses that we were running on. The difficulty for us was trying to match any evidential facts that we knew about with Angela's vision.
At the time of speaking to Angela, I was a little cynical and sceptical about the information she was providing, but in the fullness of time it was quite surprising how accurate some of the information she provided turned out to be.
Angela has given the police fresh clues, but for now they don't know what to make of them. The lead officer tries to reassure Mick's grieving family.
He'd come out and he'd explain there is things happening and we are working, but obviously we can't tell you everything in case it leaks out or in case it's wrong information we're receiving. He said, but trust me, we will sort this out and we will come one day with the answers for you.
For the police, the pressure is on. Then Angela McGee has another startling revelation.
I woke up the one morning, as I do sometimes, with messages. What I kept getting in my mind was a dolphin, block switch, dolphin, block switch.
Angela phones a friend to tell her about the message.
I was telling her about, I'm sure this is to do with the murder. I was getting the dolphin, block switch, a dolphin, block switch. And she said, there's a dolphin pub. I wanted to relay that information to Mike Crump, so I gave him a call.
Operation Greenside, DC Crump speaking, how can I help you?
And I told him about the dolphin and block switch and that something would happen in 3 days. All of a sudden, I get a name.
Yeah, OK, let me just get a pad and I'll just write it down.
I felt it was more like a nickname of either Daz or Gaz. And I felt that was also associated with murder.
Angela's information is relayed to the incident room, but for now, it's useless. Then, the police make a key discovery. They find the missing safe in a canal.
This is the canal at Slacky Lane, from where we recovered the safe that was from the Royal Oak pub. It was a breakthrough. It is important that we recover physical evidence such as the safe.
Suddenly, Angela's message about the dolphin becomes clear.
And the Dolphin Public House is situated just at the top of the road, about 150 yards away from the spot where I'm standing now.
There is no earthly way that Angela could have known this.
At the time that Angela spoke to us about the Dolphin Public House, there was no obvious connection between that pub and our investigation. It hadn't featured at all. At the very least, it was interesting.
Police are left wondering about Angela's message of the nickname.
The difficulty for us, where do you put Angela? What do you do with what Angela can tell you? And the problem is that you can't use it, can you? You can't ask Angela to step into a Crown Court witness box and on oath say, I'm a medium and I know what happened. It's completely inadmissible.
To convict, they still need more concrete evidence. Then, exactly 6 months after the murder, the Royal Oak pub is burgled again. This time, police get the lead they've been waiting for.
Bizarrely, on the exact 6-month anniversary of Mick's death at the pub was broken into again in very chillingly similar circumstances.
This time, eyewitnesses recognized the thief. Part-time bartender Gavin Chapman, son of Beryl Chapman, Mick Hughes' partner at the Royal Oak.
Gavin Chapman had a severe drug problem. We believed he was addicted to heroin and possibly crack cocaine. Michael Hughes was always quite suspicious that Gavin was taking money from him in various forms in order to fund his drug addiction.
The police had always suspected Gavin Chapman might be involved in the murder, but he has an alibi with two other men, Stephen Lockley and Lee Worgan.
We had evidence that cast doubt on their movements in terms of the accounts that they had given. But as far as convicting them for a murder was concerned, we had very little.
Now the police take a gamble. They bring all three men in for questioning. One by one, the men are interrogated and their stories scrutinized.
In the initial stages, they stuck by their witness statements.
I think they thought that if they maintained their original pack of lies, that they would walk. I'm sure that they were that blasé and confident that they thought that they could just bluff it out.
Relatively quickly into the interview process, one of them changed the story.
And they began to point the finger at each other.
The men confess to burgling the Royal Oak on the night of the murder. They accuse each other of being the killer. Police decide to charge them all with murder as a joint enterprise. It's a bold strategy.
There was a concern that was at the back of my mind that around that joint enterprise argument, the jury wouldn't be able to clearly identify in their own minds who it was that struck the fatal blows.
We felt that we had a very good and a very strong case, but you are in the hands of the jury.
You're hopeful, but you've always just, you're crossing two fingers and hoping for the best.
The trial is set for October 2004 in Birmingham, with three men charged, at least one of whom knew Mick and worked behind the bar. Everything that Angela told the police seems to be coming true. Gavin Chapman, Lee Worgan and Stephen Lockley are set to be tried for Mick Hughes' murder. Waiting for the result, Angela goes on with her normal work as a medium.
It was a few months later, after I had my visit to the Royal Oak, that I had a phone call.
Carol Hall has lost her mother and wants a medium to contact her in spirit.
I had no previous knowledge of Angela before this phone number was handed to me. In fact, she was one of about 4 numbers that were handed to me. And the reason I picked Angela was because she was the one more local, because I didn't know if there was a radius to how far they'd travel. And like the address was pretty local, so I thought I'd go for Angela.
Angela visits Carol one evening at her home.
Angela sat in the bedroom and I sat on the chair, more or less opposite to her.
The spirit of a mother came through, and I felt that her mother's energy was all around the bedroom where we were. And then I told Carol that her mother was with her son in spirit.
Got to talking about it, and then they just said, which was the devastating bit, it was Michael. And that was when I just went to pieces, and I says, that was my brother. And she said, your mum's telling me she called him Michael, everybody else called him Mick, which was spot on.
Then all of a sudden, I had a flash of the Royal Oak and a flash of Mick in my mind. And I said, it's Mick from the Royal Oak murder.
The look on Angela's face, it couldn't be captured on tape when she suddenly realised who she was talking about. She said, he keeps telling me, I've been there, and he says, can I ask, is it the pub in Pelsall? And I says, yeah.
It's an amazing revelation. Angela didn't know it, but Carol Hall is Mick Hughes' sister. Mick's spirit has sought her out again.
I could hear Mick say that he would see justice, and he would see justice 3 times. All I heard was justice, justice, justice. And then I says to Carol, I can see the family with their hands up in the air in triumph. And he also said something about Stafford and time, which I had to relay, which didn't make sense to me at the time.
With the trial hanging in the balance, Angela's message gives comfort to Carol.
With my brother coming through via Angela and saying that justice will be done, she was so right with Mum. I wanted this to be so right as well.
But until the jury gives their verdict, the family can only hope that Angela's telling the truth. Just days before the trial is due to start in Birmingham, part of Mick's message becomes clear. Another case has overrun. The trial is moved to Stafford Crown Court.
The court case, up until the Friday prior to the Monday's date for the court case, was going to be Birmingham, then it was going to be Wolverhampton, and on the Monday we had to go to Stafford, which was uncanny, very uncanny, because we weren't aware of that, nobody was.
For police and the family, it's a tense time.
You've always got that element of doubt in the back of your mind, and you're worried about how the jury will perceive the evidence that you feel is very strong, and how your witnesses will come across as well.
The trial runs for 3 long weeks.
I was struck by how appallingly badly the 3 male defendants conducted themselves throughout the whole trial. They sat at the back of the court and grinned, chuckled to each other, made smug comments about some of the witnesses that appeared in the witness box. And when they were ultimately asked to give evidence, they made the worst job of it I've ever seen in my life. They were absolutely appalling. They were flippant, clearly telling lies. Chapman was asked whether he wanted to take the oath, and his very first words to the jury were, whatever. He did himself no favours.
To hear people read it out as to the horrific injuries and how they occurred and how many times they hit my dad, that was really hard. And at one stage my mum and my 2 brothers had to leave because they couldn't cope. Because to everybody else it's a story, to us it was our dad.
Finally, the moment of truth arrives.
When the jury went out, the courtroom is charged with emotion.
It's all right, I'm just sitting there thinking, please God, let them say guilty.
The 3 men are found guilty. As Angela predicted, justice has been done 3 times.
Each of the 3 men were convicted of the murder of Michael Hughes. They were also convicted of burglary and attempting to pervert the course of justice in terms of having lied to us in the form of their witness statements.
It was just unreal. It was a dream come true.
As the family leave court, a photographer is waiting.
He said, well, for the picture you're going to have to punch the air and smile.
In a flash, Angela's last vision becomes reality.
But when I saw them, their hands go up, and I thought, yeah, that's completed the picture now.
Angela's messages to the police and the family seem to have proved uncannily accurate.
On speaking to Angela initially, I was quite cynical and sceptical about the nature of the information she provided. But in the fullness of time, aspects of it turned out to be quite accurate. Whilst it was always of limited value to us as police officers, this was nevertheless surprising.
Stepping outside the police officer function and thinking about myself as a person and Carol and Sharon spending some time with Angela, if I found myself in the same circumstances and I saw that olive branch of hope, would I reach out for it? Yeah, I probably would.
It's been an incredible experience for Angela.
I feel I've done my job's worth. I know that I work for the God Energy Force and the God Energy Spirit, and I'm just an instrument. But to me, it's like a pat on the back, I think. It was just a nice pat on the back.
Birmingham, England, January 2002. A young man vanishes. Police think he's a runaway, but a psychic has a vision of a brutal murder.
His head was pushed down and he had a blow to the head. He's describing this as if he's watching himself. He's also shown me that he's been buried underwater.
Can she convince the cops a killer is on the loose and put him behind bars? Or will the mystery surrounding this young man's disappearance remain unsolved forever?
It was really horrific. It was frightening.
Birmingham, a bustling city in the heart of England and a centre of business and finance. But like any major city, Birmingham has its problems. Over 23,000 violent crimes were committed last year. Detective Daly is a cop whose job it is to catch the culprits. But when good old police methods fail to find missing local man Mark Green, it's to this woman, Diane Lazarus, that she turns. Diane Lazarus is a psychic, and today she's in Birmingham to help Detective Daly solve the riddle of Mark's disappearance. The story starts here in January 2002. 31-year-old Mark Green is out with a friend in the city centre. When he doesn't return home, his parents begin to worry.
They called the police quite soon after the concerns became quite concrete, and they reported Mark as a missing person.
Detective Marcella Daly is placed in charge of the missing person inquiry.
Mark was a 31-year-old man that came from the Stechford area of Birmingham. He was a lecturer at a local college in art and design. He had a great bunch of friends, two very loving parents and a very good supportive family setup.
Mark's disappearance sends shockwaves through Birmingham's gay community. No one can understand why he would go missing or where he would go. Detective Daly's first task is to interview Mark's friend.
Mark's friend wasn't treated as a suspect as such, however, he was a vital person within this missing person investigation, and he held vital information, and he was incredibly supportive towards the investigation.
He tells officers what happened on the night in question.
The night that Mark disappeared, he went out with some friends, decided that he was going to go on to another club, and his friend took the bus home. Mark was last seen alive on the 17th of January, outside, actually leaving the nightclub called Kudos in Birmingham city centre. He was seen leaving through the main doors, and then he was later seen just outside by CCTV.
There are tens of thousands of closed-circuit television or CCTV cameras in Birmingham, but unfortunately Mark is only seen by one. Police make appeals on local radio for information about Mark's disappearance.
You're listening to Birmingham City News. It's Monday, the 28th of January. West Midlands Police are launching an appeal for information relating to the disappearance of 31-year-old college lecturer Mark Green. Mark was last seen in the city centre on Thursday evening. There is concern for his safety and police...
But no new information comes forward. In desperation, Detective Daly hits the streets and begins interviewing hundreds of potential witnesses.
Hi. Can I just let you have a look at that, please? It's a missing person inquiry. This is a missing person inquiry. This is a missing person inquiry. Missing person inquiry. Have you seen this person at all?
No, I haven't.
Have you seen this person at all?
Not at all.
Can I just give you that? OK, thank you.
There was obviously contact with a range of friends and also friends that perhaps he had lost contact with. There was also contact with other areas that he'd been to in his life, whether it be university or friends that he'd visited. There was nobody that came to light that would have any need or intention to hurt Mark in any way.
The police are baffled by the case. It seems Mark just disappeared into thin air. For Mark's parents, waiting for news of their son is heartbreaking.
Anne and Don Green, throughout this investigation, were incredibly brave and have my utmost respect. It's very difficult to actually wake up every day knowing that your son's not there and nobody can find him and nobody can explain whilst he's not there.
It's now been 2 months since Mark went missing. Over 150 miles away in Wales, psychic Diane Lazarus is holding a private séance for a woman called Myron Green. She wants to contact her daughter who died the previous year.
The reading is taped for you, just in case his message is passed on for other people. And not only talk about you, I talk about your family members as well.
Diane's séances are incredibly detailed. To help her clients remember what is said, she records everything to tape.
I've got a young lady coming through called Sian, and I feel that she passed over in an accident. She's saying that she loves you. She's now bringing in a gentleman called Mark. She's putting her arm right around him and bringing him forward. And she's saying that he's definitely passed over.
Diane thinks that the man is Mark Green. She didn't know that Mark is Myron's nephew or that the police think he's a missing person. Was he in fact dead?
I hadn't heard anything about Mark Green at all, in all honesty. You know, the first I heard of Mark was literally through doing that reading.
Yes, this is definitely a gentleman called Mark.
But that's my nephew and he's only missing. He's not dead.
I remember Myra was literally shaking her head saying, no, you can't have him. So I went in to describe Mark.
He's got brown hair. He's got a lovely smile. He's saying he likes art. He's also shown me steps towards a college, so I feel he worked in a college. He showed me he used to carry a rucksack. He was always in a rush.
Well, that's my nephew. He's a lecturer, but he's not dead.
He's definitely passed over in the spirit world. He's quite distressed because he's saying that
Diane's description is so accurate, Myron has no choice but to believe. She's very upset, but worse is to come.
Mark is telling me that he's not missing. He has not walked away from his parents. He's quite distressed because he's saying that he's been murdered.
I don't think for 1 minute that she expected this to happen, simply because she thought she was coming for a reading, she might have a message from her daughter, but she was really taken back by the fact that I had Mark in front of me.
Diane describes what she believes happened to Mark on the night he disappeared.
He's saying that he went to a nightclub and as he walked from there, he was attacked. He's saying that he had this nasty blow, something really heavy hit him at the back of his head. He's saying that he's buried underwater.
And then went on to say that it was a lady that's going to help solve the case. It was a lady that was short hair, nice eyes. He also mentioned there was going to be a television appearance, and after that,
the crime will all be solved.
But is Diane right? Has Mark been killed and buried underwater? Were the police wrong in thinking he is just missing?
Myra was really taken back. I remember seeing her slumped in the chair, just couldn't believe what I just told her. And she said she was shaking with this tape in her hand, saying, I know what I'm going to do with this tape. I'm going to pass this on and get it to the police.
The next day, Myron sends the tape recording of Diane's séance to the police. It lands on Detective Daly's desk. But will it convince her that Mark is not a missing person?
Mark is telling me that he's not missing. He's been murdered.
Detective Marcella Daly is in charge of the missing person investigation.
I think on hearing the tape, my feelings were a little bit mixed at first. It's a very difficult thing to kind of listen to, but I thought it was important to remain open-minded.
He's saying he's got jeans on. He had a denim jacket on at the time that he was murdered.
She came up with information with regards to location, interesting information connected to Mark's parents, but she also came up with information with regards to me, which was quite surreal, really.
There's a police officer, a lady. She's got short hair, lovely eyes.
And she described me as a key figure in the investigation.
On the tape, Diane can be heard describing Mark's appearance, his movements that fateful night. She tells of a blow to the back of the head and a burial underwater.
There were some elements that weren't what perhaps you would call guessable. You know, there was some information, some factual information with regards to this inquiry that we purposely kept out of the media, and Diane had touched on a number of these points.
Detective Daly asks Mark's parents permission to contact Diane.
Approaching Alan Dawn about the information in the tape was a little bit difficult, but they felt like any information that was coming through on Mark, that it really needed to be looked at.
I had a phone call then from the West Midlands Police, Marcella Daly, and she was asking me, how do you know about Mark's murder? How do you know all these details? There's no way you could know all these details. It was, she was very much taken back as well, and I felt I was being really questioned, big time. So I just answered as best as I could and tried to explain that I'm not a crackpot. Mark is in the spirit world, and he's given me the information.
Got very good vibes from speaking to her, and she seemed genuine and very supportive to what she wanted to help, and she agreed to come down to Birmingham to meet me.
I was really nervous when I was invited up, but pleased as well, because I felt I'm going to get closer to this. I'm going to help Mark to hopefully find his body and deal with it.
The involvement of a psychic medium was completely new to me, but she had vital information with regards to Mark's disappearance that really I couldn't afford to ignore.
Detective Daly decides to team up with psychic Diane Lazarus. She takes her to the place where Mark was last seen alive. Can she make a psychic connection with Mark and help convince Detective Daly that he has been murdered?
She felt a very strong feeling to walk in a particular direction, and that direction was actually supported by CCTV footage of Mark, and in fact it was actually the last footage that I had of Mark. The CCTV here, just that one there, we've actually got a picture still of Mark just standing here actually chatting to somebody. We don't know who that person is and they haven't come forward.
I could literally see Mark ahead of me, and he's saying, walk this way.
Diane believes that Mark is guiding her and Detective Daly along the route he took the night he disappeared.
To him. Mark literally showed me in great detail which way to walk. Just want to go straight down here.
Okay.
We said take a left here, take a right here. Because to me, he's coming through really distressed at this point. And he keeps taking me as if he wants to sort of drag the both of us down this area all the time.
Quite clearly I had an understanding of where Mark had gone, and Diane, without having that information, walked that route, and I followed her and listened intensely to what she had to say.
I don't feel he was alone. Somebody else was with him, and this guy that I feel is certainly not a friend that's with him at this point. It's as if he was staring Mark out. I kept looking at him, staring at him. It's as if he wanted me to see into his eyes, and I felt as if I was drawn into this guy's eyes. And he said, can you see what I've seen?
Walking with Diane as she was talking about how Mark was feeling, providing this information, it was quite unusual. Certainly the trained detective in me that was very much used to dealing with factual information was still remaining very open-minded. I didn't disbelieve her.
I was pleased by Marcella because she questioned a few times, but she took in all the information that I gave her, which was brilliant. And she accepted what I was saying. She didn't try and sway me anyway. She said, do you think he was here? How do you think he looked? Which way did you describe him? You know, all the right questions she should have been asking, really.
After 5 hours walking, Diane Lazarus and Detective Daly arrive at this housing estate in Birmingham's Highgate district.
This is definitely it, definitely. And I remember actually getting to some flats, and he kept saying, Diane, here, this is the place.
The psychic connection is now stronger than ever. Mark begins to reveal the full horror of what happened to him that night.
He was really hitting him and beating him up. When Mark was pushed down and kept being pushed down, he had a blow here, right there at the back of his head. The impression he keeps giving me is that his head was put down.
But police have no information to suggest Mark would ever come to this area of Birmingham. He didn't have any friends here, and it's miles from his home.
It was really horrific. It was frightening. When I was actually standing there and hearing this information, it was unbelievable. I was looking in thinking, you know, where are you, Mark? He kept saying, you're not going to find me here. You're close. You're not going to find me here. But I'd been taken away, and I could see black bags being laid out. It was terrifying. For me, even, I was in a right mess, and I felt awful. And I thought, these people are going to think I am nuts to say these things to them now.
But the walk has a dramatic effect on Detective Daly. Her growing suspicion that something sinister had happened to Mark is now confirmed. She decides to upgrade the missing person case to a murder case. Diane Lazarus has done her job. It's been several months since Mark Green was first reported missing from home in Birmingham, England. With the help of psychic Diane Lazarus, police are now treating his disappearance as murder.
Because of some supportive information on the tape, as well as a very intense investigation, the decision was made quite quickly to upgrade the investigation to a murder investigation.
It's incredible, but a tape recording of a séance is being used by police to catch a killer. Using information provided by Diane Lazarus, police begin to search whole new areas of Birmingham.
Diane provided particular information with regards to locations and areas and materials that she felt were important, and that information formed part of my searching of areas.
It's an agonizing time for Mark's parents.
The waiting for Mark's parents was just completely devastating. Not only Mark's parents, but obviously key family members, and also Mark's partner at the time. And there is just no way of actually describing how completely devastated they were as every second ticked by, really.
But despite their best efforts, the police find no evidence of Mark.
It was very frustrating for me as the main officer in the investigation, not to find Mark when I felt so committed to finding Mark.
It isn't just Detective Daly who's growing frustrated.
The length of time that Mark was sort of waiting for this case to be resolved, it was actually frustrating for Mark. But in that time, I actually did his mum a reading, and his dad. And Mark actually told me that there'd be a television programme, and after that television programme, the whole thing would be actually solved.
This is the second time psychic Diane Lazarus has said a TV show will lead to the crime being solved. The first time was during the séance over 5 months ago.
When Diane spoke on the tape, she mentioned the use of media, a wide range of media, but also that we'd be attending a TV show.
Incredibly, in May 2002, Detective Daly is called and asked to take part in a talk show.
There's going to be a television programme.
With Diane's words ringing in their ears, she agrees to take part.
I certainly felt with regards to Mark Green that we really could not afford just to ignore it. I felt I had to justify to the inquiry, and I felt I had to do it for the parents.
Marcella rang me and said there is going to be a television programme, and I was really taken back. I remember watching it and thinking, it's not going to be long now.
A very unusual step.
During the programme, Detective Daly is criticised for using a psychic in the investigation.
This was a real help.
It enhanced the investigation.
Yeah, I noticed you used a very kind of careful word there, enhanced.
It was quite critical of the approach that I had personally taken with the use of clairvoyance mediums. What I stress and what's important for any family that's considering this, that there are lots of people out there that will take advantage, quite clearly, but there are still people out there that have talent and do want to actually help people when they're in such a vulnerable state to find missing loved ones.
The broadcast comes as a shock to one man in particular. Scared that the police are closing in, he decides to save himself and step forward with information about Mark's disappearance.
A person called James came forward and basically provided information to say that his brother was responsible for the murder of Mark. And that he was responsible for helping his brother dispose of Mark's body.
I was pleased that this gentleman had walked into the police station and obviously said that he'd been involved in committing the crime, because it's exactly what I'd said. I said there was going to be a television programme, and from that moment on, I knew somebody was actually going to own up to it, so to speak.
Incredibly, Diane was right. A television show has brought a killer to the surface. But what did happen to Mark on the night he disappeared, and where is he now? James's brother, Robert McMahon, is a neo-Nazi with a history of violent crime. Police arrest and charge him with the murder of Mark Green. But despite intense questioning, Robert refuses to confess to the killing, but James does talk. He tells police that Robert killed Mark on the night of January 17th in his flat in the Highgate district of Birmingham, the exact location Diane led Detective Daly to months earlier.
I remember Marcella giving me a call up and saying that the place where I'd taken her was actually a spit away from where Mark had actually been murdered. So it was well worth going up to Birmingham and taking that walk.
Before this case, Diane Lazarus had no connection to Birmingham. There is no way she could have known either the area or Robert McMahon. So how did she come so close to the murder scene?
Weeks before, months before, I was standing in the spot thinking, I can't be in the right place, no way. And yet, that information was brilliant.
Sometime after the murder, Robert McMahon takes Mark's body by taxi to his brother James's house in Coventry, 50 miles away. With James' help, they bury him under a pond in the back garden, just as Diane had seen in her horrific vision months earlier.
When I found out that Mark's body had been buried under a water feature, it was just unbelievable. It just proves that Mark's detail was so phenomenal, really.
On June 7th, 2003, a forensic archaeologist is brought in to excavate the site. As each layer of soil is carefully removed and analyzed, a body is discovered. 12 hours later, human remains are exhumed. After forensic tests are complete, the body is identified as Mark Green, and the cause of death is finally revealed.
When Diane described how Mark had been murdered, and when Mark's body had been found and forensic information came to light, it was quite factual that Mark had been killed to a blow to the back of the head.
When I found out that Mark had died from a blow to the head, it was confirmation for me that Mark was giving me the accurate information at all times.
How did Diane Lazarus know where Mark was killed, the cause of death, a blow to his head, and that he was buried underwater? The information she gave to police is all well documented and far too accurate to be guesswork. Diane has only one explanation. Mark told her.
I really feel I've got a duty to the spirit world because I feel I'm employed by them, so to speak. So when I'm given information, I really try and act on it straight away.
At their trial, it takes just 1 hour for a jury to find both McMahon brothers guilty.
Robert was sentenced to life for the murder of Mark Green, and his brother James was sentenced to 2 years for helping dispose of the body of Mark Green. I think Mark's parents had basically been to hell and back with Mark's disappearance and murder. I think the case, when it came to an end and when the two were found guilty and sentenced, was a relief to both Anne and Don. But Again, it just re-emphasised the great sadness and the great loss in their life.
But why did Robert kill Mark? Was it because he was seen leaving a well-known gay bar? Was this a homophobic attack? Or was he just in the wrong place at the wrong time? If this was just a random act of violence, would police have solved this case without Diane Lazarus' information? One thing is certain, Diane's prediction that a TV show would lead to the crime being solved did encourage Mark's normally reticent parents to appear on TV with Marcella Daly. Without that show, James McMahon may never have come forward and given evidence against his brother, Robert.
I think Diane was helpful in solving this case. She certainly enhanced the inquiry and provided information that led to a number of lines of inquiries and obviously with the end result of finding the people that were responsible for Mark's murder.
To this day, Diane says that Mark still appears to her. She feels he is one of her most trusted spirit guides.
He still comes through, I still have conversations, and he's fantastic, actually.